What came down though? What came down?
We crashed. The other trade center's down. It's down.
That was Reuters photographer Shannon Stapleton in 2001.
It's down.
After the Twin Towers fell, he was on the ground within minutes.
Everybody was running the opposite direction and said we're under attack. You know, the second tower had been hit. And it was really crazy because it was a surreal day, kind of like this. A little cooler, a little more fall-like, but it was beautiful. I hate seeing helicopters around here because that always makes me think of that day.
His series of images came to define the day and were published globally. Responders carrying victims, survivors emerging from the smoke. One of them, this woman, was Kayla Bergeron, who, unbeknownst to him, he would share a connection with. She was head of public relations for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, who owned the buildings, and had just made her way down 68 darkened and flooded flights of stairs. It took her nearly an hour to reach the bottom.
I had these photos of the people coming down, and Kayla was one of them, and you know, I had no idea who they were, and I made those photos, and the adrenaline was starting to, the reality of the whole situation was starting to really hit me, and you know, I thought about my wife, who is in Brooklyn teaching, pregnant with my son, and I said, it's time for me I gotta try to get out of here.
Both managed to get to safety. Minutes later, the North Tower collapsed. 20 years later, they finally met, brought together by that picture. The PR executive and the photographer were connected in that shared slender moment, and by deep psychological wounds they both say they've only recently come to terms with.
It really affected me mentally and psychologically. And I went through several years of having very bad dreams.
You never know what it's going to be like in that situation.
Bergeron left New York, but suffered with extreme anxiety. There were night tremors and flashes of light while driving, and she turned to alcohol. She was later diagnosed with PTSD and depression.
Like right here.
For Stapleton, the years that followed 9/11 were filled with professional success. In 2005, Reuters hired him as a staffer, and he traveled from one disaster or conflict to another, from Hurricane Katrina to Sandy Hook. Stapleton says he's made a career documenting death and despair.
For a lot of time, I think that I did not deal with it like I should have dealt with it, mentally and therapeutically, but I went on.
In the summer of 2018, he says, it all came crashing down. He became anxious around people. Eventually, he says, he couldn't even work. He sought help and was diagnosed with PTSD and severe depression.
It was a really awful time. I missed like 2 years of my children's life. You know, I just wasn't present. I just wanted to be in my room and sleep. And that's something that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy.
Ready, buddy?
Fortunately, I changed my ways, and I met this incredible man, a psychiatrist, who dealt with some issues differently. And right now, like I said, every morning I say thanks. I feel like I'm doing the best work of my life. I'm doing the best photography of my life. I'm doing the best journalism of my life.